So hi everyone, my name's Jordy Tilt. I'm a peer financial coach with UO Financial Aid or UO Financial Wellness. A little bit about me, I'm a history major. I'm an undergraduate sophomore.
Hi guys, my name is Natasha Reyes. I'm an undergraduate, I'm a public relations major, and I'm from El Paso, Texas, and I'm also a peer financial coach. So before we get started, we just kind of wanted to introduce you all to our peer financial wellness plan. And just to go over our mission briefly, it's to financially empower students with the knowledge needed to make sound financial decisions during and after college. So by you all being here at this budgeting workshop is a perfect first step for that.
All right, so let's talk about the big five real quick, which are as it says, the critical areas of holistic financial wellness. So this kind of plays into our mission, and it's kind of like the big five, probably not most important necessarily, but key areas. So earning, which is budgeting, what we're going to talk about today. Spending, which is managing the inflow and outflow of money. Again, budgeting. Borrowing, so we had some workshops on this earlier, and I'm sure we'll have more to come, which is obviously student loans, building credit and preparing yourself for the future, the safest way to do that, how to manage debt necessarily, protecting, which is, making sure you have good financial security, and online security. So, how to defend yourself against identity theft and fraud. And if you do have an issue with it, how to best go about correcting it. And finally, saving and investing. So saving strategies, the basics of investing. We do all these things here. And budgeting is really the first step. So by being here, you guys are taking the first step to the big five.
Yeah, awesome. So just to go over more of how our program specifically works. So we have workshops like the one that you are currently attending. And in addition, we also have one-on-one financial coaching. So you can meet with Jordy or I or anyone else from our team for that matter. And, due to the current times, it is currently virtual, but the link that's there underneath is where you can go to schedule appointments. And then also we are working on building partnerships throughout the entire UO campus with different student organizations, different types of student groups. And that's kind of how we're getting started right now.
All right. Yeah. So this is that was the brief intro, right? Now we're going right into budgeting for college students. So yeah, let's just move in.
Yeah, let's get into it. So basically, a budget, as Jordy said earlier, is pretty much the big first step into financial wellness. So this quote here by Dave Ramsey, a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. That's exactly what it is. A budget is taking that first proactive step into looking at the rest of your money situation.
Yeah, and just kind of in the same thing, budgeting, just, the most basic bare minimum summary is spending money wisely. So that can mean a lot of things, but we're going to go right into an actual budget.
Do you all think that income reflects wealth?
So, sorry, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough question because somebody could be spending a lot of money, even if they're making a lot of money. So, right. But if you don't have an income, a high income, then it's bad too. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you make a great point there. So the slide that we're kind of on right now is sort of a way to approach the answer to that, which I think you touched on very well there. Earning a lot of money is not the key to prosperity. It's how you handle it, right? So just because someone makes a lot of money doesn't mean they handle it well, right? Which is why we budget. And if you spend all the money you make, maybe that is not a good sort of representation of your wealth. But if you make very little money, but you budget it fairly and save or invest or really handle the small income, you can have greater wealth over time. So, the answer is yes and no. It depends on how you handle your money.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we want to go over today, which is regardless of how much money you make, you can always be in control of that with your budget. Yeah, so just to go over the outcomes that we have for you guys today, we want you to be able to track and discover where your money is going using a budget. And we're going to get to go over a budget with you guys specifically. We'll send you a document and you guys can look at it yourselves. Recognize expenses that can be fixed instead of fluid. We'll go into those definitions in a bit. And finally, making your own realistic budget so that your money is on track.
So benefits of living with a budget. So there's just four, critical things, right? firstly, maybe most importantly, money available to pay bills, right? So the basic things that you've got to meet every month, we have to pay our bills. So budgeting can really help you hit the essentials. It helps establish a record of paying bills on time, building credit history, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. But if you have anything on loan, like a car loan, or if you have a mortgage, a lot of college students probably don't have that. But if you pay your loans on time, your credit score goes up, which is great for your long-term financial wellness. Lower stress over finances. I can say that's a big thing for me personally. I'm very prone to anxiety about my financial situation. So when I made a budget, the first time, it really helped me feel confident in my spending and feel like I have to focus a lot less on that, which in turn allows you to focus more on classes, which, that's why we're in college. So a budget really helps you kind of all around feel a lot more secure and allows you to.
All right. So where does your money go?
Okay. So now we're going to get into the basics of tracking spending 101, right? So this is kind of just a brief so before we get quite into making a budget, a good way, because I think probably the most important thing we can say is everyone's budget's going to look different, right? Because everyone has a different income and has different priorities about how they want to spend their money. Someone might really like to eat out, as where another person really enjoys spending money on their hobbies. Or you're like me and you do both, and then you really have to focus on your budget. So first you have to record all your purchases for a week, and then try that for a week to 3 weeks. And you can do that on an expense app or a memo or a smartphone or a spiral notebook. I use Excel, or you can, keep all your receipts. And this will kind of give you a really good idea of how much money you're spending in a month or a week. And then you can kind of extrapolate on that and create a budget with it. So I think it's a really soft way to step into making a budget, is kind of recording all your purchases for a small amount of time, and then you can kind of look at that.
Yeah, exactly what Jordy said. You don't want to just create your budget out of nowhere. You want it to be reflective of the habits that you already have. Best way to do that, recording everything. I personally just use an old school composition notebook where I've kept track of my spendings, handwritten notes. There's a lot of good apps such as Mint or Pluto that a lot of people use to start keeping track. So we kind of want to talk about the difference between fixed and variable expenses. So these are going to be the two main components of your budget. So fixed expenses tend to be reoccurring, and as the word says, fixed. So they're going to be definitive expenses that you always have to meet, tend to be monthly. Sometimes it can be, weekly, bi-weekly, but these are expenses that you're always going to have reoccurring. So a lot of this example might look like right now for college students, this is your rent, this is your tuition, these are the books that you have to buy every term. If you're paying for your cell phone, you're paying for parking, car insurance, all of those things are what we call fixed expenses.
All right. And then we're going to look at fixed versus variable expenses, right? So when we were talking about fixed previously, variables, kind of things that change every month, right? Which is gas or transportation, which kind of varies month to month depending on your habits. Your food definitely can be variable, although it can also be fixed depending on how you look at it. Entertainment, that's definitely variable, right? Because you never spend the exact same money in entertainment every month. Campus activities, definitely like things that accrue fees or have dues, right? That definitely changes on a month-to-month basis. So it's just kind of like the difference between the two is every very standard expected expense versus something that has the ability to change every month to meet your needs.
Yeah. So things that we kind of want to talk about are what the easiest way to go about your budget is to control those varied expenses. So if you're able to look at your spending habits and put a cap on, say, how much money you're spending out eating food, or put a cap on the amount that you're spending in entertainment or extra shopping, that's going to be a great first initial step, because you're always going to need to pay those fixed expenses, right? You can't not pay rent. You can't not pay your parking fees or et cetera, but you can change those varied things. You can stop how much you're going out to eat with friends, or, how much you're spending on groceries or shopping. So those are the first things that you kind of want to tackle and look at ways to place spending caps on them, with those variable expenses first.
Yeah. And just to add a tiny bit onto that, I think that when we say cap, it's kind of like you're looking at changing it from a variable to a fixed expense, kind of in a way. It's like, maybe you just start spending the same amount on groceries every month, because that kind of turns it so that it's a less up in the air, right? So it's kind of that idea to shifting a variable expense into a fixed expense. just, yeah, basically what Natasha said.
Yeah, that mentality is perfect. Jordy, I can't see the chat. Was that a chat that popped up?
Can I get the links to the recorded file for the last workshops about scholarships, and how can I get one for this workshop? The links for the recorded workshops, I believe, are on Financial Wellness website currently.
Yeah, so we'll have them up there, and we'll be able to post the links for that one and this one, any previous ones and any current ones.
Awesome.
Yeah. Just a second. The PowerPoint kind of got ahead of me there. All right. Go ahead, Jordy.
So step one, identifying monthly income. So now we're going to send you a budget worksheet, and let's just get right into designing our budget. Okay, great. So identifying monthly income, right? That's your part-time earnings if you're, a full-time college student, or your full-time job, depending on your situation. Available savings. So let's say you're going to need to tap into your savings this month. That's considered income because it's not an expected source. Family contributions, any kind of family aid you get is also income. And then also loan payouts, right? So if you have loans from UO or from whatever, right, and that helps pay your rent, your food bills, whatever you need, that definitely is considered part of your monthly income. So put that into your budget because that'll help you kind of get a mindset for it.
All right. So comparing income and expenses. So this is essentially, the goal of the budget, which is, do I have money left over at the end of the month from what I've saved? Or, did I spend a little more and kind of need to get back on track? So by recording all of your expenses and measuring it out to your budgeting worksheet is exactly what you're supposed to do. And with that money left over, it's essentially kind of going back to yourself. So if you, are able to save $50 at the end of the month, maybe you're able to put that in savings and it'll come back to you in the long term. Jordy, I know you have some good advice for getting back on track.
Yeah, I think definitely one of the most stressful things, right, is when you're over budget. And there are plenty of months in which I've gone over budget, especially in the first few months of budgeting, because you have to really hold yourself to it. It's hard, I think, at the beginning, right? When you first make that budget. And I can say I spend a lot on my hobbies, right? I'm very into I buy a lot of video games and stuff like that, right? And they're very expensive. And when they come out, I'm just so motivated to get them, right? But I turned my expenses for that into a fixed variable, right? So every month now, I limit myself to a certain amount of purchases I can make in that sort of vein. And I've saved a lot of money doing it because I think that's just critical to limit yourself in the first months. And if you do go over budget, that's totally okay. But you just have to realize that next month, you're going to have to either partially make up for that budget or plan better, right? So you can see that you went over budget, maybe you spent too much out to eat this month. So just next time, or next month, focus really hard on getting that down. Wouldn't it be better to put money into savings first, kind of like paying yourself? Okay, that's an excellent point, and that's what I personally do, right? On my monthly budget, I actually have savings as an expense. I try to put roughly 15 to 20% of my paycheck into savings every month. That's not possible every month for me though. And it's definitely not possible for everyone. So that's kind of why we look at saying money left over at the end of the month right now, because some people really don't have, they live in a way where just because, college is very expensive and it's stressful to meet all the needs you have. So maybe putting away a lot of your paycheck up front every month is just not realistic because it's not going to financially be you need to use that money for your basic needs. So right now we say money left over at the end of the month, place in savings. However, if you can plan every month to put away a certain amount of money, that's perfect. And you should look at that as an expense as well. Put that on your budget.
Yeah, paying yourself first is the perfect mindset for that. But I'll tell you guys personally that I fall on the other end of that. I don't place money in savings first. So as Jordy was saying, college is tougher and a little more strict. So my goal for my budget is to try and lower those varied costs. That way I can then put money in savings. But it's sadly not my first priority, but everyone's budget is different. It looks different for everyone.
Yeah, well said. Everyone's budget is different. It's the best way to put it.
Jordy, you can go for this one.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about cost-effective alternatives. So this is kind of a way to look at, these are just some basic ways that college students can really avoid spending too much, right? Let's say you're fixed. This is both fixed and variable, but this is kind of focusing on you got those fixed expenses. How can we lower those? Because lowering variable expenses, that's easy, right? Eat out less. Not a hard one to figure out. But maybe we look at meal plans, right? So let's say you have a meal plan and every month you spend a certain amount on, for your points, but you have a lot of points left over every week. Maybe you should consider lowering the meal plan. It's actually a huge step in money from each meal plan, and you can save a lot by lowering your meal plan if that's something you need to do. So just consider that. I know definitely my freshman year, I started out at a higher meal plan than I ended with because I realized I didn't eat the way that meal plan reflected, and I saved a lot of money by going down. Books. This is another one where I personally have definitely figured out is different. Some very important things to do, right? I would recommend not buying textbooks until until the first day of class, and your professors recommend to get the textbooks, or they send an email out to you personally or to everyone saying, hey, buy these ones. I can't tell you how many times I purchased a textbook, shown up for class, and then the teacher, is like, or the professor is like, hey, we're not using this. It's just on the degree guide. And then you can look into buying them used online, like Amazon. A lot of times you can find most textbooks for way cheaper used. And I highly recommend going about that before going to the duck store. Save a lot of money that way. Housing. I know this is renting books from Faith. Thank you so much, Faith. Yeah, definitely. Renting books is an excellent alternative too. And the duck store facilitates that, and there are other ways too as well. Housing. I think that's sort of a tough one, but definitely you can look into cheaper housing. Always consider that, a lot of factors to weigh with housing. So, you can consider getting more roommates or moving into something a little more cost effective. Spring break. We kind of put here as a catch-all for maybe when you have that time off from school, try to limit your spending in a way that it would be reflective of if you were in school, right? Because I think a lot of times we can get off budget on the holidays because we either aren't working then or we're going out and buying things that we normally wouldn't, vacations, things like that. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I'll add, Jordy, I think one thing that all of these have in common is they're all kind of, breaking out of that norm cycle that you have and getting creative with ways to save money. So if you can kind of change those normal habits that you make and be like, hey, I think there might be a cheaper way to do this, and looking into that can get you a long way. So just as there's the alternative to save more, there's also the alternative to earn more. So, this can also be a little tough, but it's like, hey, if I have no income, well, a perfect way to do that is, start looking for a part-time job. But we know that, flexibility, availability might not be for everyone. But a good pro to getting a part-time job or another job could be, of course, helping with expenses. The con, of course, timing, availability, the type of job you want. But we definitely recommend looking at on-campus jobs. A lot of those times they'll prioritize your class schedule. They tend to pay more than minimum wage a lot of the time. They're super nearby and efficient just going on campus for your job. And then off campus, of course, there's a little bit less flexibility, but there's also the possibility of getting paid a bit more if you're doing something a bit bigger of a role.
So just to sum everything up, we first talked about to discover where your money is really going, right? So the basic step to budgeting is finding out where your money, where your money can go versus where your money went. Number two, convert as many expenses as possible into fixed expenses. So we talked about kind of lowering those variable expenses, capping them, making them fixed and determined and not unexpected, if that makes sense. Three, make a realistic budget so that your money stays on track, right? So we talked about that being tracking your week-to-week spending for a while, and then that can help you kind of get a really good idea for what a monthly budget would look like, and then creating that monthly budget that we set out. Also, if you guys have any questions, if you guys want to take a look at that worksheet and you guys have any questions about it, please feel free to ask, and we'd be happy to answer it.
Yeah, we can walk you through anything on that. So before we go to kind of close things off, I just wanted to reiterate that so much of your budget is very personalized to you. So a lot of people have many different values or priorities as to where they're going to spend that money. So it's pretty much all just up to you and where you feel most comfortable with your money going. A lot of people like eating out way more than they like shopping or, buying things on Amazon or buying gifts, etc. So it's mainly just tailored to you. So don't feel pressured that you have any right or wrong spending limits or you're trying to budget things out, because it is all personalized to you. And another thing that I'd add is budgeting really comes down to just, discipline, but it's not just a one all be all type of thing. It's going to take time to get to where you want to be with your budget, because at the end, you're breaking spending habits. So these are habits that you may or may not even realize are just spending leaks for you. So don't kind of limit yourself or feel so strict that it's like, okay, from one day to the next, my budget is going to be completely perfect. That's not how it's going to be at all. It's going to take time to get there, time to build new habits, to get accustomed to where you want your money to be spending for you. And yeah, that's definitely an important thing to remember, because a lot of the times we'll see people trying to close off all of their spending at once, saying, I'm only focusing on priorities, not leaving much room for a mistake or for a fun moment. And that kind of zero to nothing approach is not very good. You got to be gradual with yourself and take the sure steps to build up to where you want to be.
Definitely, right? There is no right or wrong answer to your budget. The only bad answer is spending more than you can afford, right? That's really how budgeting works, right? That's the only wrong answer in the group, is spending too much. There are always surprises. The vet bill cost me $1,000. Yeah, definitely. I think that's part of having a general savings, right? To defend yourself or help ready yourself for those sort of one-off expenses that completely break the budget. I know my car had broke down a couple months ago, and I need it very much. I use it for daily transportation, and I had to spend a lot more than my budget would allow in 1 month on car repair. So that, that came out of my general savings, right? That's like okay, I have to afford this now. So that's why we like to recommend building a general savings net if you can, to protect yourself against those expenses, because we definitely want to avoid credit card debt. That's a nightmare. Yeah, definitely. Having an emergency fund is always nice. I agree.
Yeah. And from there, say something comes out of your budget that wasn't expected, just make sure you're always taking the steps afterwards to get back on track. So sometimes that looks like, unfortunately, cutting off varied expenses. You had the emergency, you had to fix your car. Now I can't spend as much going out with friends on food. And it's kind of those caveats and those trades, and you have to really work with yourself and be disciplined in, just taking care of the priorities first.
Well said. And then one-on-one appointments. So definitely what you want to, for these budgets, if you want to follow up with a one-on-one, that'd be excellent. We highly recommend that. Again, you can meet with like Natasha or I or any other of our Pure Financial coaches that are great. So to schedule a virtual appointment, you want to go to financialwellness.uoregon.edu. Yeah, we can get you guys going. We got a question real quick. When we schedule meetings with Pure Financial advisors, can we pick from specific advisors, or is it random? You can definitely, I think you can pick.
Yeah, you can pick specific ones. Yeah. So if you feel comfortable meeting with the same advisor over and over, you can definitely do that.
Yeah, it's probably good to build a relationship like that of trust, right? Mm-hmm. Especially because, finances are a personal thing, right? So
that's check out that website. And then, of course, we have our emails for any questions, our social medias, webpage, and then, of course, our YouTube for anything else.